Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming you see here, the musicians and artists that I visit with, please be sure and hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Robert Specht is an American guitarist and songwriter who was a member of San Angelo band The Boys and the Remaining Few. The Boys formed in 1964 and a couple of years later changed their name to the Remaining Few. Members were at one time or another Mike Jones, Robert Glodt, John Mulkey, Frosty McKee, and Robert. The band would release just one single in 1967, Painted Air, B-side In the Morning. And here's a story that has become familiar to me during these interviews. A band mostly unknown during their time releases an album or a single that goes virtually unnoticed until decades later. Then there is a resurgence of interest in the band's music. And at that point, the record becomes a collector's item and the band reaches almost occult status. Welcome to the story of the Remaining Few. Well, welcome, Robert.
Well, welcome here. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Alton, Illinois.
Okay.
And my father worked for the Coca-Cola company, but we moved around as if we were military.
Okay.
So I was born in Illinois, then soon we moved to Minnesota, and then Muskogee, Oklahoma, Houston, Texas, El Paso, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and then finally to San Angelo when I was a teenager, when I really got into music with the band.
Okay. Well, yeah, you must have moved to the South when you were very young
Yes.
because you've lost that northern accent. You don't have any of that.
No, I guess my father was from Illinois too, and they didn't really have much of of northern accents that I remember.
Yeah.
And my earliest years growing up, I remember were basically in Houston. So I guess that was like when I was about 3 or 4. So that's where my southern drawl came in.
Okay. Well, I have one myself. So, lived all my life in and around Dallas. So,
Mhm.
a little while in San Antonio, but mostly around here. Well, what were your earliest memories of hearing music in the household?
The earliest I remember when we lived in Houston, when my father worked for Coca-Cola, they did big promotions with some radio stations down there. And I don't know if you remember the concept of the sock hop.
Yes, yes.
Okay. There, they sponsored the sock hops. And I remember we had these little stockings you'd put on your feet that had Coca-Cola on them. And I got to go and watch a DJ when I was about maybe 5 or 6. And I was just absolutely amazed at this guy. Uh, Sat and talked on the radio and played music, and I thought that this is really cool. And so that kind of got me interested in it. I didn't really start anything until we lived in El Paso, and my father bought a hi-fi
Oh,
and bought records, mostly his taste. Although I remember that's not too much later than the Beatles came out, but he was a big fan of flamenco guitar and Western music.
is that right? You,
Yeah.
you know, I had to mention my dad also had a hi-fi, and my earliest memories were listening to Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass.
All right. Right.
You mentioned flamingo and that south of
Yeah.
the border sound, yeah,
Yes.
early on. So that's been with me my whole life. I
Right.
still enjoy that. Well, were either one of your parents musically inclined at all?
Not really. I think my mother at an early age started the piano, but she was more interested in dance, and so we didn't really have any musical instruments until we moved to Dallas.
Okay.
And my father decided he really liked flamenco guitarists, classical guitarists, and just on a fluke one day he decided, well, one of you boys, I had a brother, an older brother. He said, one of you boys is going to have to learn how to play the guitar.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention about Coca-Cola, I wish my dad had worked for it because that's my favorite soft drink.
Is it really?
Yeah, I guess you guys got a lot of promotional and freebies and things like
Yes, we did. Yeah, I
that.
wish I would have held on to them because they would probably be worth a lot of money now.
Yeah, yeah, I imagine so. I imagine
Yeah.
so. Well, so was the guitar the first instrument you learned to play?
Yes, it was,
Yeah,
and it was. I didn't ask for it.
yeah.
My father decided somebody's going to have to learn how to be a flamenco guitarist, and he looked at me. He said, "You know, the second child always comes out on the short end of things."
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
thought, "Well, I'll do you a favor. We're going to send you to guitar training. When you come from your class, show your brother what you learned."
Yes, yeah, okay.
And so he walked in one day with a classical guitar. I don't remember the brand. Uh, I remember if you look at classical guitars in the hands of a small guy, that's a huge neck and
Oh, yeah, get your fingers around it right.
right.
Yeah,
Uh,
yes, yes.
but and he made arrangements for me to start taking guitar. And I don't know if you remember the Fred McCord School of Music in Dallas.
No, no, that doesn't ring a bell. No.
Okay. Uh, I don't remember exactly where it was, but every day, not every day, once a week after school, my father was so committed to me learning, he would leave work early, pick me up, and take me to my guitar lesson,
Oh,
and then bring me back. And so that's how I got started with that.
oh, okay. Yeah,
And
I was in. There's a few years difference here between us, but I was in Tyler in the mid '60s, probably '65 to '68 or so, and I didn't realize it at the time because I was so young that Robin Hood Studios. You're familiar with Robin Hood Studios, right? No, no. Okay, it was the biggest studio there, and they recorded several bands. What is it? John Fred. Remember him? John Fred and the Playboys. They
okay.
were like from Louisiana, I believe, but it was just a short jaunt. John Fred, real quick. Fred. Judy in Disguise. Judy
Oh,
in
Judy and Sure, I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. It was a
Yep, yep,
pretty
yep.
big hit. Yeah. And a couple other
Good
bands
deal.
that did there.
Yeah,
But looking back on it now, I could have walked. It was that close,
really.
to that studio.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah,
being oblivious to it. Well,
yeah.
I guess did having an older brother, did he buy the 45s or albums and then kind of pass them on to you or
He did buy them. He didn't pass them on to me that much.
okay.
But I would go take the guitar lesson, and I guess at that school, I was kind of my first guitar instructor was just, I mean, amazingly cool guy. He was a beatnik. I mean, the
Uh,
goatee and everything.
yeah.
And you start off on these songs like Tom Dooley, G and D seventh, two chords, and you start progressing. His name was Guy Parnell, and that, of course, I was like 13 at the time, and he was in his 40s, so I'm sure he's not around anymore. But this was a really cool guy, and I thought music was going to be tedious and disciplined, and he was so cool and so much fun that really got me into the playing.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You had somebody like that to help teach you because I hear, especially with piano lessons and stuff, how structured it is and,
Right,
rigid. And, people, the musicians just want to kind of branch out and do their own thing, uh,
right.
at a point. Well, can you recall, where were you? Were you already out in West Texas by your teens? Were you already out there?
Hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Were there any concerts? Did you go to attend any shows or live shows?
We didn't really do that. I moved to San Angelo, and for the first few months I was here, I got established as far as instruction. When we moved from Dallas to San Angelo, my father had to find another guitar instructor. And luck out number two was he found a guy here named Frank Trevino. And Frank Trevino had an orchestra, and he was a fine gentleman, tall, lanky. He had fingers as long as 6 inches. I mean, he could make an octave on a guitar neck. He was an amazing, agile, but he was a gifted teacher and musician. He had a full orchestra with horns and everything, and he did all the arrangements and music for that. So he's where I started to try to learn how to read music as I and play from it.
Okay.
But I had not really gotten anything as far as going out and listening to concerts at any time, even before, even when I started playing with the boys.
Okay.
We really didn't have that much here in San Angelo as far as rock concerts or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah. How far is San Angelo from Lubbock? How far is
Uh, we are kind of in between Midland and Abilene, east to west, but we're about south. We're southwest of Abilene by
that?
about 90 miles.
Okay. Yeah, I had a best friend. He's passed on now, but he had lived in Midland, Odessa for a
Hmm.
while. Yeah, out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure that you had heard of by that time Buddy Holly.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sure.
So, and that's very interesting to hear how influential he was even to the UK musicians, that I talked to. So that's very interesting.
And he grew up with a group of guys. If you can look them up, I remember it was Buddy Holly, Waylon Jennings maybe had been in that group with
Yeah.
them,
Yeah. I think.
and that amazing group of guys that got together out in West Texas and had a group, and then they all went out and conquered the world on their own. So that was really kind of an interesting uh, thing to come from in West
Right.
Texas, because you think of L.A. and Nashville and all those places.
Yeah.
But It's kind of interesting where that all originated.
Yeah, I find it interesting too how, like Waylon, for instance, and so many others would start out playing a certain type of music, and then reinvent themselves later.
Hmm.
Country and western.
Right.
And but I find that it just shows their versatility. I know as well. Well, were you in a band or bands prior to the Boys, or was that your first
No,
one? Okay, that was your first one. Okay,
that was the first one. Right.
okay, okay. All right. So you honed your chops and cut your teeth on.
Right.
Were there other local bands at the time, or?
There were, if you may have heard of course, this is a little bit before my time. There was a band back then, a local band, and the name of it was J. Frank Wilson and the Cavaliers.
Yes, yes, sir. I have
They're
heard.
here, we're here in San Angelo, and they recorded Last Kiss here at Accurate Sound, where we produced our record. And we had another local group called the Centrics, and they were like us, a high school bunch of guys that put a band together. And it was comprised mainly of two brothers named Tom and Dan Peake. Dan Peake went on to be in America,
Yes, he
of
did.
course,
Yeah,
with no name. So
right.
Little West Texas does have some, guess some reaching out of sending of talent. So
Yes.
uh, there's a pretty good history of musicians here. And some of the people from J. Frank Wilson, their original drummer, Roland Atkins, his nickname was Snake. And he mentored us when we were the remaining few. We'd be playing in a bar, and he was known to hang out in a bar, and he'd say, "Hey, lead guitar player, instead of doing this, do this."
Oh, okay.
And he was a pretty sharp guy, knew how to play every instrument. I had when our organist left Vietnam, we needed an organ for a few songs, and the first keyboard I ever bought was from Snake, Roland Atkins, and I swapped him a Epiphone guitar, electric guitar, for this keyboard, and I had to clear off the beer stains and the cigarette burns in it. But
On there.
yeah,
You think you got the better deal there?
uh, probably, probably.
Well, talk about how the boys got together and the band members' backgrounds. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Uh, at school, I was in a biology class, and I shared a little biology. We were doing stuff where you cut up dead frogs and stuff like that. And my lab partner was a guy named Robert Glodt,
Okay.
and his dad owned Glodt Flowers. And Robbie was a first guy I ever met that really kind of had long beetle type hair, and he was a fun guy. And we became friends just sitting in class there together. And one day he mentioned to me, I played the drums, and we're getting a little band together. And I said, well, that's kind of interesting. I play the guitar a little. Of course, he didn't know I'd had already by that time 2 or 3 years of classical training, but and he said, well, that's cool. He said, and he mentioned it several times. And then one day he said, well, tonight after dinner, the guys are coming over and we're in our garage and practice. Why don't you come on over? And so it wasn't but a block away from where I live. So I went over and listened to him. And he said, well, Robert, do you have a guitar? I said, yeah. He said, well, why don't you go get it? And so I went home and I had this silver tone guitar that was in a case, and the case was also the amplifier. So you stood it up and opened it up, and that was your amplifier, and you plugged the guitar into it, and it was like a 5 watt amplifier. And the other guitar player was a guy named Mike Jones, who ended up being probably my longest lifelong friend until he passed a few years ago. And the bass player was a guy named Chuck Brooks. And he didn't have a bass. He had a guitar. It was an electric 6 string guitar with the speaker built in the body of the guitar.
Okay, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, and that was the bass. And he just turned the tone all the way down to full bass tone. And I came in and we started playing, and they hadn't seen anybody that could play. Like I knew bar chords and stuff like that. And they were so impressed, they asked me to join the band. So we started practicing together, either in Robbie's garage or in my garage. And
Let me ask you, did you guys get enough volume out of your built-in amps? Did you get enough?
we got enough where the police were called on us for
Oh,
disturbing the
okay. Yeah,
peace.
I would say so.
Yeah. And that's really how we got our first, the name for the group, because all we ever heard was, you boys turn that crap down, would you? So you boys, that's us. We were the boys.
Oh, I find that fascinating how bands, come up with the names,
Right.
doing these stories. Yeah. Well, did you all pretty much share similar taste in music?
Pretty much. Mike and Robbie were really heavy into the Rolling Stones and into the Beatles. Yardbirds, absolutely loved the Yardbirds. Chuck was more of a surfer dude, and he had a surfer car, and he liked surfer music, which we didn't play that much. And I found out later, we found he wasn't going to practice with it anymore, and there was a kind of a conspiracy that I wasn't aware of to
Oh,
uh,
oh,
to
really?
remove him.
Oh, to oust him,
Yeah,
huh?
so he
Oh,
kind of left the band, and through Central, I mean, high school is where you make your connections with these.
yeah,
We found another bass player who really had a bass guitar and amplifier, and his best friend was a singer. So Frosty McKee became
yeah.
our bass player, and Joel Mulkey became our singer. And so the picture of us on the bridge by Central High School is one of the pictures that you'll see of on there. Was Robbie and Frosty and I and Mike and Joel, and that was the
Yeah.
original remaining few after Chuck Brooks left.
Right. Well, how often would you guys play live shows early on, and where?
Uh, we played first. You got to get noticed, and so you play stuff like parties, and there was an organization called TAR, Teens Aid Retarded, which was a group of people that had services for the mentally handicapped people. And we played for parties like that. And the rodeo would let people that were just not real well known just in one of the barns set up and play. And we did a lot of that. And finally, after a while, we started getting to play in local dances. And one of our mainstays was a club called the 13th Hour. And it was your typical West Texas beer joint with a
Okay.
dance floor.
Yeah.
And when you walked in, it smelled of stale beer and
Oh,
cigarettes.
oh, yeah, yeah. That's not a nice smell.
No, not a nice smell.
No. Did they have the chicken wire?
No, not chicken wire on that one, but
Okay, okay.
it was close.
They
And And
Go
what
ahead.
was surprising to us is there was this kind of this was a young crowd. This was not teeny boppers and
Okay.
rockers. This was truck drivers and country western people, and they loved our band.
Yeah, yeah,
And so we played there quite a bit. Uh, we didn't play that much in San Angelo, like the high schools or the junior high, and it was mainly found out later due to our record. Believe it or not, the song "Painted Air."
yeah,
The lyrics to it got us banned from playing for San Angelo Independent School District venues.
yeah, yeah,
So we either played out of town or at the 13th hour.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's sad to hear that. Yeah, I've a few people I've talked to, musicians, have had that same experience. Their record, one was just because of the picture on the cover of the record banned, but then
Mhm.
there was another one with the lyrics that got them banned. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunate that that happens. Yeah. Uh, well, uh, when and why was the band's name changed to the remaining few?
After Chuck left and we added other people, we thought, well, I don't want to be boys from now on, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So we were just trying to figure out a really cool sounding name, and you go through a bunch of them, and for some reason somebody just, and I don't remember who it was that suggested the remaining few. It may have been Mike,
okay,
but we all said, yeah, that's a pretty cool. Uh,
okay.
we had some others that you don't want to discuss, but joke, but
Yeah, yeah,
we became the remaining few, and people liked the name, and so yeah, that's the one. I have even recently decided, out of nostalgia, I would go have T-shirts made
yeah.
from that original picture of us on the bridge, the black and white. And of course, I sent it to a T-shirt company, and they put it on the front of a black T-shirt. And I have a few of them. I've given them to some friends, so that's kind of a
That,
nostalgic thing there.
yeah, that was a good idea there. Yeah, to do that. Yeah, to kind of rekindle that too. As well. Wow. Yeah. Uh, well, where did the band record the single "Painted Air" in the morning?
Okay, we Mike knew a lot of people because of his I guess, work relations or different jobs he did. And he um, heard of a guy here in San Angelo that had just converted a large multi-car garage into a studio. And he was definitely really interested in getting in the recording business. And he spent a lot of money on this garage, having egg cartons stapled on the ceiling and on the walls, and Celotex dividers for each instrument. You'd have a little kind of cell you were in with the Celotex walls, and microphones, and a big reel-to-reel recording. And Mike found out and asked the guy, well, could we record? And he said, man, that'd be great, because he was looking for people to learn to do the recordings. And so his name was George Talley, and we ended up going up there, and of course we had to have songs, and we'd written quite a few songs. I had written several, and Mike had written several, and we just kind of threw them into a hat and said, well, which ones do we want to use? And Painted Air was actually part of a much longer song I had written a few years before, called Death Angel, and it was pretty dark stuff. And anyway, it we took kind of the center portion out of it, and Mike and I together worked out the arrangement, and we decided on Painted Air, and we did that. Well, we recorded about 7 or 8 songs in Mr. Talley's garage, and he had the original tape, and I wish I knew where it was, because
That
I
would
had
be,
been contacted by people from Europe and from
yeah,
Austin, and saying,
yeah.
we want to redo that song. Can you come up with the tape? And nobody knows where it is. So we have, the only thing they have to work with is the original 45s, if they can find one in pretty good shape.
And try and clean those up a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's unfortunate too, because yeah, they could release. I know a lot of these labels, like to re-release and master, remaster. old
Mhm.
material like that. And oh, that would be something if you could locate those tracks. Wow.
Yeah. We did the recording on his studio in on the tape, and then he took it to Ron Newdall at Accurate Sound. And I guess at the time you'd really kind of call it a vanity press. We had them make 345s with painted air on one side and in the morning on the other side. And then here we are, this group of guys sitting in the floor with this big box of records going, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah. What's the next step?
Yeah.
Right, right. Well, I always make a joke about the egg cartons. You know how they put those in the studio.
Mhm.
Couldn't do that anymore because of the price of eggs.
Right.
Right.
That's
So
right.
it's good that people have the home studios now and
Yeah.
things like that. Can do it at home. But yeah, the very interesting. Well, what is the story behind the song "Painted Air"?
As I said, it was part of a longer song, and it was pretty dark stuff. And you get moody as a teenager, and you come up with, I guess, the hormones. I don't know what it was, but you get in these little dark areas.
Yeah.
And the Death Angels started off with the the lyrics will, I'll take your world and I'll turn it black, turn a rich man's house into a shack. All across this land they'll fear my name. I will turn the strong into the lame. That was where that song started. And so in the middle was a guy dying. And it's, here I lie on my deathbed. And Mike fussed at me when a guy called me from London, and they won. This was a surprise because this was years later, and it was caught just cold out of nowhere. That I got hit with this guy going, "Hi, is this Robert Specht?" And I go, "Yeah." He says, "Is this the Robert Specht?" And I said, uh, "I
Yeah.
guess. What do you? Who is?" He said, "Did you? Were you in a band called The Remaining Few?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Did you do a song called Painted Air?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Wow, man, this is amazing to talk to you." And I mean, I was a guy that had forgotten about it for years. But Mike always fussed at me about, the guy wanted to know what was the song about. And he said, "Don't tell him." He said, "It's like a painting, a abstract painting. You paint it and you let each person get their own
Own
feel
impression.
out of it."
Yes, yes.
And so
I like
basically, all you can say, it's a narrative of a guy passing from this life to where we don't know,
I
at
like
that time. And he kind of, as he said in there, a man stands over me, one final plea, and I disagree. And so you get the idea he's not going to the good place. He's not, it's ending right there.
right.
So anyway, that's about as much. And there's a lot of interpretation in all this music.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
think that's best. Like you said, leave it up to the individual listener, to
mhm.
come up with their own impression of that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Well, you put the music out there and then let them interpret it the way they
Right,
yeah,
right.
yes. Well, was that the first time most of you had been in any kind of studio? You said,
Yes,
okay, okay,
yes.
okay.
Uh, we really didn't have much to record with. If we'd had a cell phone, well, what you have today, a
Yeah,
smartphone, you could have recorded.
yeah,
And
yeah.
today, I have multiple computers in my office here, but the one we're on now is a Mac, and I use GarageBand uh, to do all kinds of simple tracks and stuff because I have my own YouTube channels, and I do the backing music for them because that way I don't get hits for copyright infringement.
Oh, tell me about it. Oh my gosh. I have another channel where I just post songs from different musicians.
Hmm.
And I learned early on, you can't post the big ones because they're going to get you for that, the
Right.
copyright. I have to do the ones that were the B-sides, maybe demos,
Hmm.
things like that. Yeah, that kind of, I have to fly under the radar
Right.
when I do that. But yeah, that's very true. Very true.
Yeah. Well, this all came to a shock to us because, as I said, we hadn't thought about it for years. And that guy called me and wanted to know about the band and all that. And he also wanted to know, do you have any of the original 45s? And I said, yeah, I've got 4 or 5 of them. And he said, would you sell me one? And I said, well, that's kind of nostalgia for me. It's like the guitar I played it on. I still own it. I bought a Guild T100D brand new in 1967, and I still have it without a scratch on it.
Is
Uh,
that right? Is that
and
right? What
it's
what is
what
that one? What is that one behind you there on the wall?
that is. Believe it or not, that is a Vox
Okay.
SSC 33, and there's not very many. I kind of go against the grain. If everybody's buying Stratocasters, I buy something weird, and
Yeah,
and that's what I
you're,
came up with the Guild Hollow Body Electric called the
yeah.
Slim Jim, and I still have it. It's in great
Still
shape.
have it. Wow. How many guitars do you have in all? Okay.
Let's see, I have two acoustic, a 6 string electric, and three other electrics, and I have a bass that I play in a church band, and if whatever they need that weekend, acoustic, electric, or a bass. I
Right.
never got into drums, which my parents are probably grateful for, but
I bet they were.
right,
If you did, you'd have to play if you had a basement or outside.
right, right.
Yeah. Or when they're not there. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard that. Yeah, yeah, I've heard that too about drums. Well, on the single, uh, did you guys do something similar to what the Electric Prunes did on "I Had Too Much to Dream"? That was it a reverb, that noise on a guitar or organ that you
It was on the guitar, on the screeching sound,
yeah, yeah,
and I'll go ahead and end this. We were overwhelmed at the amount of curiosity or information on us on the internet.
yeah.
Robbie Glodt, who's our drummer, I ran into his dad at the grocery store. He said, "Man, have you seen all the stuff on the internet about your band?" No. And so I started looking it up, and I found all. I don't. You may have been to our website and saw all the links,
Yeah.
and I was just flabbergasted. But there was one argument online about, oh, he used a Fender Stratocaster, and he had this kind of amp, or he had this kind of amp. And back then, we didn't have a lot as far as foot pedals.
Mhm.
We had a wah wah pedal, you had a
Yeah.
fuzz pedal, and tremolo and echo or something like that was on my custom amp. And so I used the Guild guitar and a custom amp. And so none of them were even close to what I used, but it was just muffling the strings with one hand and just beating the tar out of them with a pick with a lot of reverb and a lot of echo is how
Yeah.
that sound was created.
Yeah.
And that it was a constant picking, da 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 da. And I can't do that anymore. I tried, sat down, and my wrist wouldn't do it. So
Oh, yeah.
that's just, I
Yeah.
quit playing guitar for about 40 years.
Did you?
And when I went in the Air Force and started traveling, got out of the Air Force, and I was a pilot and was gone all the time. And I would have loved to have got the old guys together
Yeah.
and done that, but it was really hard.
Yeah.
And so I just put it down. Maybe once a month I'd get it out and tune it and play
Okay.
for a few minutes. And it was not until I was in church, the pastor said, if you play the guitar, bring it to the Christmas party. And I was goaded into it by my wife and my next door neighbor. And I played there, and they asked me, "Would you play with our praise band?" And I played with the praise band, and another guitar player in the praise band was a very good lead guitarist here in town named Mark Stevenson, and he had a band uh, that I joined. And I met a guy in that band who was a singer. He's a local attorney named Guy Choate. He's got a YouTube channel, Guy Choate, and
Oh,
he's done
okay.
some music recorded there. He's a very good singer and a real nice man. And through those connections, I ended up in 3 different bands. Now I play with the church band. A guy and I and another guy have a band called Three Man Band, and we play at some venues here. And then the blues band is kind of on and off, just for people come and go. And when you get tired of it, so we quit for a while, and then we'll start again. But it was basically how that all went.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You said is his last name Choate? Is that how you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
Guy Choate, and
Okay. Yeah.
He's an attorney, and he's a really good singer, and he loves to sing. And he'd practice and sing 5 nights a week, and if his wife would let him, he's a really good guy. So we practice with them, and then when we're we're always, if we're short of a band member, it's usually a bassist.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
I don't know why. Everybody plays guitar, but nobody wants to play bass. And
Yeah.
the old saying is, if you play bass guitar, you're kind of like the only guy in the neighborhood that has a pickup truck. Everybody wants to be your friend because you can't find bass players.
Like the redheaded stepchild,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
band. Yeah, that and sometimes the drummers too kind of
Hmm.
get the short end of the stick. Yeah,
Well,
everybody wants to be lead guitarist. Yeah, yeah,
well, carrying your guitar around. So I have this other YouTube channel called Guitar Rob, and on the initial episode, I pointed out, people have this creative need they want to create artistically,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and if it's music, then you're going to go into what kind of instrument you're going to play.
Right, right.
And guitar is a kind of a natural selection because if you play the guitar, you'll get invited to parties and stuff to play your guitar, as opposed to if you play the tuba, people don't much ask you to come around.
I just, I just,
Come
yeah,
on, come bring
yeah.
your tuba.
I just spoke to a guy yesterday who grew up. He played, I think, the accordion was the first instrument he played, and he quickly figured out there's no future with a rock band.
Right.
I said not unless you want to do polka music, or
Yeah.
like that. So he dropped it after a while. But yeah,
Yeah.
well, I wanted to, but you do know the I had too much to dream last night. The
Yes.
Electric Prince. Okay,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It does to me. When I first heard Painted Air, I was like, oh, I'm thinking of that. I mean, it reminded me so
Oh,
much of
really?
that. Yeah, that's the effect they got too in
Hmm.
that. And then the B side in the morning. I
Hmm.
don't know what it is. To me, it has kind of a Van Morrison kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the reviewers on them, because our those records have been in a lot of auction sites, and I was kind of flabbergasted when I saw that that 45 sold at a higher price at one auction than the Beatles' original 45, and
Wow.
it was mind blowing. But it's the reviewer said in the morning, which is kind of like Ferry Cross the Mersey.
Oh, okay. Going back,
And
I can hear a little bit. Yeah.
yeah.
One of my
And,
favorite songs too, by the way. Yeah, Ferry Cross Mercy.
and so I asked myself later on, did I subconsciously copy them? You know how you're influenced by my
Yeah,
music? I thought,
yeah,
I don't think I plagiarized them. It's just,
yeah,
but it was kind of interesting when somebody pointed
yeah.
that out to me.
I'm going to go back and listen to it again and see if I hear more of that in there. Yeah. Well, was there any reaction at all to the single in San Angelo?
We sent it out to radio stations, and one of them was our local radio station. And we sort of knew the DJ because he hosted a lot of, they'd have events at the Coliseum dances and stuff, and he would be a MC or something like that. And we took it to him, and he, kind of looked at us like, yeah, okay, fine. And we heard it play. Actually played it on our local radio station, and at the end, he said, well, it looks like the remaining few have a national hit on their hands.
Oh,
And we
okay.
thought, oh, that's really cool. And that was the end of it. We
And
never
that
heard
was
another thing for
another thing.
18 years.
Then it's all quiet on the
Yeah.
Western Front
But
after
when the
that.
guy called me from Europe, he said, you're a big hit over here.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, he classified us as a punk band.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I was a little bit, I knew what punk was,
Yeah, yeah,
British punk. And I thought,
yeah.
we're not anything
I,
like
I don't
seditious.
hear that. I don't hear that. No, I
Anyway,
don't. I don't. But everybody has their own like again
right.
impression of it. But yeah, that's interesting. Well, maybe he was trying to help promote it. Saying it's a national hit. Maybe he was trying to give it some mileage. you know.
He he acts like he just thought it was neat to talk to me, and he was very, very interested in
Yeah,
buying one of the original 45s.
yeah, yeah,
And when I started seeing the attention they got,
yeah.
the only one we gave away, a couple of guys came out with some compilation albums.
Yes, yes.
One
Right.
called High in the Mid 60s, and I don't remember the other.
Yes, I think I may have that one too. I collect those. I get almost all the various artist compilations. That's how I find out about a lot of bands like
Yeah,
yours. Yeah, from
yeah. So,
those. Yeah,
so they contacted Mike, and he sent them each a 45,
yeah,
and in return, we all got a copy of the compilation album.
yes, yes,
So that was pretty interesting, but we didn't understand at the time how far we had gone,
yeah.
and then one day I find out that we're on one of the websites where you can go and listen to music and buy. Think of it here in a little bit, but I'm saying I didn't put us there.
Yeah,
Where did they get us? Not well. It showed up on Amazon. They were
yeah,
selling recordings on Amazon,
yeah.
and I never authorized that. Talk about YouTube stripes. Was looking for our music on YouTube, and I found Painted Air, and it was had been re-recorded by a German band,
Really.
word for word, note for note, on
Yeah,
their band's name.
yeah.
And I reported that to YouTube and they pulled it.
Okay. Well, good. They
So
pulled. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I'm not, when I post on my channel, I'm not trying to. Most of the time, I think if you went directly to the artists themselves, it's the labels, it's the companies that are trying to strike you, you know.
yeah,
You know how it is, the music business. But, I think if you went to the artists themselves, they would say, I'm all for it, you know. Yeah,
yeah,
do put our song on there. They don't have a problem with it.
yeah.
Yeah, but the copyright, that's always a,
Yeah, what they did is they recorded our song themselves and put their name on it as
see,
the
that's not
yeah,
right.
yeah,
No, no, no. And there are other stories about that we'll get to. I want to hear about those. How the and lack of royalties that you
yeah.
guys didn't see. Were there any other songs recorded or any other demos at all?
As I said, that one tape that we made originally
Yeah.
had quite a few songs on it, and we don't know what happened to the tape. So uh, the members, when you eventually grow up and you go your own ways, and we had a trophy that we had won in a battle of the bands, and we had different things, and nobody, one guy would have them for a while, and then he'd give them to another member, and then I guess you die. Well, we've had several guys pass away, and their families may have gone, well, what is this thing? Well, I don't know, trash it, and
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
so we don't know what happened to a lot of that stuff, and we were looking just for pictures, and a lot of bands
Yeah,
have a lot of pictures of them taken, and it's hard for us to find any pictures besides some of the ones you may have already seen,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
the guys. So
Yeah, that's unfortunate too. At the time you're going through it, you don't really think of those things. Let's document this. Let's,
right,
for the
right,
future. You don't really, yeah, you don't. It doesn't cross your mind.
right.
But well, go ahead and pick it up. What did all the members do after the band?
Okay, well, we played as long as we could, but there was this thing going on called Vietnam, and we had this thing called the draft.
Yeah,
And so young, healthy males got to go bye bye for a while.
yeah, yeah.
And the first one to go was our singer, Joe Mulkey, and he spent a year in Vietnam. And then by the time he got back, our organ player, Larry Logan, had gotten drafted. He went going to Vietnam. And then Mike Jones, the other guitar player in the band, when we started kind of getting loosey goosey about membership and everything, he had an offer to go play with the Cavaliers.
Oh, okay.
And so he did several years playing with the Cavaliers. Of course, there were some of the people were different. J. Frank Wilson was gone, but they got another singer. He was ended up being a realtor here in town. James Thomas is his name, and he was a awesome singer. And and then things like women, you get married, you have babies.
Yes, life gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
when Mike left and when Larry left, we were basically a three-piece with a singer. I played guitar. Uh, we had a drummer and the bass player, Frosty McKee and Charlie Ushery, and that was kind of, we still sounded. I thought we sounded really good for just kind of like a little cream band, and that's when I
Yeah.
got the keyboard from Snake, so I could play some of the songs that were in our set list. And then my turn in the draft came,
Oh, okay.
and I kind of had to make it. I was still just had finished 4 years of college,
Yeah.
and so your deferment was gone. I did not have enough hours to graduate.
Right. Right.
So I got my draft notice and I ran to the ROTC office, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I held up my draft notice. I said, "Can you get me out of this?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he said, "Well," he said, "where do you want to be in the Air Force?" And I said, "Well, I got a pilot's license. I'd like to be a pilot." And so
Yeah.
2 years in ROTC and 7 years Strategic Air Command, and really didn't do anything else until, like I said, 40 years later, and with it. And Mike went on to be an electrician, and Larry Logan was a contractor. Joel Mulkey went to work for the same company I flew airplanes for, Verizon. He was a cable splicer. Charlie Ushery ended up moving someplace in Ohio, and he was a foreman at a meat packing company. And our bass player, Frosty McKee, is in somewhere around Conroe, Texas, down there.
Oh,
And
okay. Really, really.
yeah,
Down close to Houston, down
yeah,
County Gwinnett.
he was an interesting guy in that every time we played, we'd start to play a song. He said, "Well, what key is it in?"
Yeah.
And we'd say, "Frosty, we played this all the time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
C, F, and G." He says, "C, F, and G, are you sure?" Yeah. I said, like Gloria, we played it all the time. E,
Uh-huh.
D, A, right?
Yeah.
And so we were just, sometimes we'd say, "We're going to have to write down the music for you on all these songs."
Yeah.
So years later, I find out that Frosty is on TV on the Lisa Gibbons show. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
that
yes,
channel.
I do. She was with the ABC, our affiliate, Channel 8. Yes. Yes, I
And
do. Yes, I do.
he was on as a guest, who is the current uh, world record holder in the Guinness Book of World Records for memorizing card decks.
Really?
You could shuffle up four different decks of cards together in one pile. He could go through them one time and then recite them in perfect order all the way through the four decks. And he did it on television. And I thought, where was that memory when we were playing in the
With
band?
the band.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know how certain peoples, savants and things like that do that kind of thing. It's mind blowing. It really
Yeah.
is. A whole deck, 52 cards. I mean, wow.
But he did four decks scrambled
And
together.
four
That's
and
just,
four and
and
can do
with,
it. Wow.
and he wasn't, I guess he's been, somebody has beat him, but he was in the Guinness Book of World Records for a while there. So, I mean, interesting places you go.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Wow. Yeah. Just speaking of the draft, I don't know why somebody didn't just close the window and just stop the draft, back then.
Yeah,
But no, I talked to a Rick Brown. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember the band, The Misunderstood. They
I've heard
were
the name.
okay. They were in California, but then they relocated to England, I think London, and
Yeah.
made it pretty big out there. He thought when he was in London, once he got his draft notice, that he would be, you know, he wouldn't have to serve, being in another country. Oh no, no, they kept coming after him and coming after him.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he ended up finally just stringing it out long enough that they finally gave up. But yeah, it was interesting to hear that story too. Well, um, also, so the guys that did go to Vietnam did come back. They came
Yes.
back. Okay, okay.
Yes.
Well, that's good. Okay,
Uh,
that's
Larry came back and he was the same Larry Logan. Joel came back and he had this, I guess you heard gunboat duty, where you go
okay.
up and down
Oh,
and they shoot at you.
yeah.
And I think it darkened his heart a little bit, but
Probably pretty accurate what they
yeah,
showed in
yeah,
Apocalypse Now. It's probably
yeah,
pretty accurate. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that would. Yeah, that would.
Yeah.
Well, when did you first start hearing about the renewed interest in the single and the band?
Well, that was that day, and I think it was in 80,
The guy from England.
82.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like I said, I was, at the time, I was flying a night cargo route for GTE was in the company. Now it's Verizon. And we'd take off every evening at 6 and get back about 2 o'clock in the morning. And about 2 in the afternoon, the phone rang. And back before cell phones and caller ID, you answered the phone.
yeah,
You,
yeah. Yes.
hello. And that was the guy who asked me, is this Robert Specht? And I said, yeah. He said, the Robert Specht.
Yeah.
And I had no clue prior to that time that anybody had ever heard of anything about us. And when he said, you guys are a major hit over here,
Yeah.
all over Europe,
Yeah.
and I even had a second person call me from, I'm not sure if he was from Great Britain, but he also wanted to re release the, the 45 again. And of course, he was risking it. So he wanted a free 45 from me. And I
Oh,
didn't see why, because you could download the digital music of it to do whatever you wanted to with it.
yeah. Yeah.
And I just didn't want to send him a free copy of the 45 because I only have like five of them.
Right.
And so that didn't go through. But, you know, he brought that up. And then when I talked to our drummer's dad, he said, you're all over the internet. And then I got an email. I guess you may have seen on our website that I was contacted, and the guy sent me questions for an interview
Yes.
on
Yes.
his website.
Yes.
And I was surprised how much he knew about us.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, where's all this information coming from? I mean, who knows that much about us? But that was about the time it really started noticing how much interest there was in our group. And it would, like I said, I would have loved to be able to get the group back together, but we were so far scattered, it was really hard and difficult to do.
Yes. Yes. Uh, Garage Hangover. That's the website, the
Yeah,
written
yeah,
interview. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
In fact, a lot of the musicians that I talk to, band members, I see an overlap. They've talked to this guy, on
Hmm.
that channel or website. And then what is the other one? There's another one too. Psychedelic Baby Psychedelia or Psychedelic Baby. Psychedelic
Oh,
Baby is another one.
okay.
Yeah, it does a lot of the written ones. So I
Yeah,
see a lot of that, commonality there doing those.
yeah.
Yeah, yes. And
And as I started researching it back then, the Painted Air, there was about, well, there were several YouTube videos where Painted Air was the music backtrack, and they had all kinds of psychedelic visual effects. And one of them had scantily clad ladies running around, and it one of those I was surprised had like 47,000 views,
wow.
and I didn't even know it existed. I don't know if it's still up,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I
that
wonder how these people first found out about it. Was it like through these various artists compilations, or a lot of them, they're crate diggers, what they call crate diggers, and they'll go to these record conventions, not collections,
hmm
conventions, and dig through the crates, and then they'll find that like this 45. And the rarity, just the label alone, rarity,
right,
really, really piques a lot of interest. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
then that, wow, wow. So where else did you hear from? Other countries, any other areas?
Just the initial contact, and I think it was Great Britain, and
Okay.
there's another one somewhere in Europe. I don't remember the place. And then there was the guy from Austin that contacted me, and they were kind of wanting the original tape, which I unfortunately could not provide to them,
Yeah.
all wanting to re-release it. And that would have been fun if they could have, but they really seem to need the original tape to do it a good job of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, it would ebb and flow. There would be interest for a while, and then I wouldn't hear anything for a while. But it was just my kids were like looking at me like they just thought was boring old dad just, flew an airplane around.
Right.
And then they saw on there that at an auction, my record sold more than a Beatles record. That they were
Yeah,
kind of amazed at, like, are you
right.
sure that's you?
Yeah, is it the
Yeah.
same Robert?
Yeah.
And then also then you become cool all of a sudden, right?
Yeah. That was,
That's funny. Yeah, I've heard that story too,
yeah.
how it
Yeah.
kind of
My wife just mentioned I had somebody mentioned, and I think I have a screen capture of the picture that they were talking about the song Painted Air. And the guy said, yeah, they have or play that music at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at one of the exhibits there.
really.
Yes.
Wow.
And that was a shocker. And I didn't know anything about it. But evidently, there is a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame out in LA,
Yeah.
and they have different exhibits and booths and stuff. And there was this one video, and it had Painted Air as the music.
And they,
And so
wow.
that was kind of a shock to me.
Yeah,
But
and of course
said,
you didn't see any money from that either.
no, no, no.
No, that yeah, that's that. Yeah, I would have a certain amount of resent for that, I'm sure. But if I was in a band, but yeah, when people just kind of take it and exploit it that way, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's unfortunate. That definitely is.
Well, and we were talking about this guy that I play with, Guy Choate, this guy that sings with. He's an attorney, and he is talking. We talk a lot about what a horrible nightmare the music industry has become,
Yeah, yeah.
and people complain about having to pay $1,000 or $1,500 to go to a concert,
Oh, tell me
and
about
we're
it.
discussing that's the only way they can make any money. They don't make money on recordings
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you can copy recordings all day long for nothing. And
right.
I think I was earlier was saying about Spotify. We
Yeah.
showed up on Spotify, and there's a lot of people that follow us. Uh, I didn't put the music up there. And I talked to the other band members. Did you put this up? No, never knew anything about it. And I guess Spotify gets money from people going to their website. I don't know how it works, but it's an interesting story. My wife has a cousin who's a movie producer, director out in California. His name is Jay Roach. And I've met Jay several times. And Jay is married to Susanna Hoffs of the Bangles.
Oh, the Bengals. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes.
I was talking to one of her sons. We had a family reunion, my wife's family reunion. And I asked about, I was a Bengals fan. And Susanna to me had the most bewitching eyes.
Oh,
But,
yes,
and
yes,
I asked him, I said, that's your mom? He goes, yeah, that's my mom. I said,
yes,
wow, your dad's
yes.
a billionaire movie producer. Your mom's a famous. How about that? And I said, well, what's she doing now? She says, well, right now she's a big fight with Spotify.
Oh, okay.
And I said, well, what's that over? She said, well, they've got music up that she doesn't want up. She wants to put different music up and they won't. I said, well, I understand because Spotify, because they put my music up and never authorized it, don't know where it came from.
Right.
And there was other issues where my song I told you was you could buy it on Amazon. I don't know if it's still there, but Askell was a BMI affiliate,
Yes. Okay.
Askell Records.
Yes.
So I wrote BMI and I said, hey, I'm a BMI songwriter according to my contract. Still have a copy of the contract
Yeah.
and Askell Records. And I said, what is the deal on royalties? I've had this song out for years. Everybody in the world's doing stuff with it. And they pretty much response was, sorry, never heard of you. Don't go away and don't bother us. So
Yeah.
makes,
It it's a shame. It's
yeah.
really is a shame. I think it should be in the hands of the artist. You guys created it.
Hmm.
It shouldn't be in the record labels and on these, like you said, Spotify and these websites taking control over it. That's you. They should always come to the artist and get their permission.
Hmm.
You know, and unfortunately, like you said, it's not happening. Or it hasn't been for some time. And you can't make any kind of royalties that do come in. I hear from musicians, it's piddly. You probably know the ratio of how many times it has to play before you get anything,
Sure.
and they said it's enough to pay a bill or go out to eat with, you
Hmm.
know.
Kind of like a YouTube, I guess. You have
Yeah,
a million, you get a
yeah,
cookie or something like
right,
that.
right. The thing, yeah, with the metrics, what they talk about and monetization.
Hmm.
I've been told you have to reach 1,000 subscribers to get anything, and I'm only at 630, something like that, a little over halfway. And
Yeah.
I may get one or two a month, or maybe five, something like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it's just very slow developing. So yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Probably not.
No, no,
But
I don't, I don't rely, depend on that. But
yeah.
well, talk a little bit more. I mean, you did mention a little bit earlier about what you're doing now, and then the bands you're playing in. Are you still writing music? Do you still do any of that?
Yes, I do. And that's what a great help GarageBand on iMac is. It's a for somebody that's not real smart in sound engineering and using that, it was pretty easy to kind of get used to, and you can lay in track after track after track. And so I took some songs that I had written back in the '60s, and then I had written some new songs, and I would record them on the GarageBand and save them as MP3s, and then print out the lyrics and the chords. And to kind of protect myself this time, when you record music, it's supposedly copyrighted, right? When you make the recording. So I sent a recording of the music and a copy of I don't write music, but I did the lyrics and the chords to the federal government to get them registered trademarks.
There you
So every song I've done in the last couple years, I send a copy of it and the lyrics and everything to the federal government. There's a place where you can register that copyright, and
Yeah,
you actually get a document that says, yeah, this is actually copyrighted. And so the songs I've done, we've played some of them in our three-piece band. We did one of my songs called "Prayers of a Cowboy," and then Guy has several that, and you can find him uh, on on YouTube, and we've done
it's Jan.
a couple of his. But so I still do those recordings, and a lot of the music I record I just use as background music for my YouTube channel. I have a drone channel. I don't fly airplanes anymore, but I fly these little remote controlled drones that the controversy is big on these days. And just kind of sightseeing with the drone flying around the countryside.
Okay.
And then I use my own music recorded on GarageBand as backtrack music, and that way I avoid any kind of copyright infringement if it's my song. So uh, and I do have all the songs. I have a great place to play them right now. We're playing Prayers of Cowboy on two of the bands, and then the rest of my music I play at church, and I really never had much of respect for contemporary Christian music till I started playing it.
Yeah, yeah,
And there's some bands that have some tremendous musicians and arrangements.
yes.
And a lot of people tease about, well, Christian musicians are just failed rock musicians.
Um,
But some
no,
of them are impressive in the stuff they can do. So I was kind of impressed with that. And then, the other two bands, there's just a lot of cover music that we do. And
yeah. It's yeah, that's not fair to what you said, the label about Christian musicians, it's not. But one thing I wanted, it's unfortunate that growing up, band members didn't have a business sense,
right,
So, you know, you don't. You want to be a musician,
right,
and everything. And then later on, you learn the ropes, maybe sometimes too late,
right.
But yeah, like the copyright thing, and and the royalties, and what's the word? You want the uh, publishing if you have the publishing, then you have everything. So yeah, it's unfortunate that you couldn't be endowed with that when you first start out.
Well, it's kind of like these football players we have today. They're great football players, but they get $1 million contract and they're broke in a month.
Yeah, that's right.
And so part of if you're going to go to a professional music, they ought to have a place where you can take classes on protecting yourself and managing your finances and your rights to your material, because it's pretty important. And I guess an example of that was Taylor Swift when she finally bought back her entire library to get control of it.
Yes,
To protect herself.
Yes, it is important, very important to do that. Yeah. So, well, anything else, Robert, that you'd like to mention, kind of coming to a close here, that we may have overlooked, or that you'd like to plug, or?
Oh, I don't know that I plug anything. We just, I've always thought about the possibility when I sit down and discuss over a beverage some of the goings on of a bunch of West Texas kids playing in the little towns all around West Texas, some of the trouble we got into or barely got out of. I had thought maybe about writing that down, see if anybody'd even believe some of the stuff that we got. I mean, I'm here alive today, and that to me is amazing from some of the stuff we went through as crazy teenage boys on the road, in West Texas.
Right. Well, maybe there's a memoir in the works.
There may be.
Yeah, see about that.
Yeah.
All right, Robert. It's been very enjoyable. I want to thank you again for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me. And I did subscribe to your channel, and I do watch your videos, and I
All
give
right.
them the
Oh,
thumbs up
good.
when I watch them.
All right. Well, good. I appreciate that. Yeah. And when you do have time, extra time, kind of scroll through, and you might recognize some in there that you'd like to check out. And when you have a little bit of time to do that. Well, again, you have a good week upcoming, and weeks after, not just 1 week, But thanks again. All the best to you, Robert. And I will send you a copy of this probably next weekend or so.
Okay.
I do these on, one weekend, and then the following weekend is when I do the editing and that kind of thing.
The editing's a job, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. It can be. Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
But it's fun too. I just enjoy hearing your stories, And
Well, you've had some interesting people on some of yours, and some of them were, pretty sophisticated backgrounds, some big names and it's interesting to see what's going on. Those are interesting people, and you're doing a great job with your interviews. Commend you on that.
Well, I appreciate it. And hey, you're an expert. You're a pro now with using Zoom. So there we go.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right. Okay. All right, Robert. Well, bye-bye for now.
We'll see you later. Thank you.
All right.